614 Productions presents The Not So Neutral Zone, a podcast for armchair enthusiasts by armchair enthusiasts. The opinions expressed on this show are those of the participants and in no way represent those of any sports organization, league, team, or athletes therein.
With your hosts, David, I got nothing this week, Trexler, and Jacob, along for the ride, Smith.
If I had done it, I would have called you Clark Griswold because you just came back from vacation.
Yeah, my vacation wasn't to Wally World, though. We did go to Walmart once.
That is a freak show in and of itself.
Well, that's the surprising thing about the ones up north. They don't have ABC stores. They actually sell the liquor in Walmart. It's got its own little nook as you go in the grocery door. Right there you go.
Just convenient, right up front.
Yeah.
Can I get you a buggy? Yeah, and then goes right into the liquor part. Doesn't even go to the groceries.
Nope, just got to get the liquor.
All right. So what do we got on our plate today, David?
Well, there was the one thing we were going to do before the show decided to take an extended time off. Kind of give us some time to get some content to do. But one of the things was pretender or contender. And that was just going with the teams pre-draft. Do we think are going to be a contender in the playoffs? Or are they just sizing up to be a pretender? Like Cleveland. All those offensive moves they've done, does that make them a contender or are they still a pretender?
Now, what would you consider contender status for Cleveland? I would consider contender status if they could win more than 7 games.
I think wild card is for somebody like them, because if you think about it, this time last year, did you have Jacksonville making the playoffs? Or what about the pipe dream that they would have been an AFC championship game?
Yeah, no one would have predicted that. All right. Well, do you have a pretender? What do you want to do first? Pretenders or contenders? You got a good contender.
We can do contenders.
Contenders first? All right. My contender is the LA Rams. All the moves they've made, the changes they made, I think they really work out. However, I don't think this team stays together more than like a year. You've got a lot of egos now in this secondary on the defensive side. I think this is a 1-year shot at trying to win a Super Bowl. And think about it, if they could do that before they open up their new stadium, what's the first thing to go up in that stadium? Raptors. Super Bowl 53 champions.
One team I'm curious whether they're going to be a contender or a pretender is Tennessee. You've got a new head coach who just happens to be somebody from the Bill Belichick era as a player and has done good things as a coach. Will they make the playoffs again, or do we have that chance that the AFC North becomes the dominant division again in the AFC?
Yeah, I think with Tennessee, when they won their playoff game, I thought for sure that they were going to keep Malarkey and that they were going to roll with him next year. I was pleasantly surprised when they fired him because I think that team was held back a lot by him. They've got a lot of talent.
Here's another thing that I wrote down was, which 5 teams do you think are the big winners from free agency? I gotta say Cleveland, because look at all the guys they got. Landry, Taylor, I forgot who the other guy is. Plus, they're going to have Josh Gordon back for a full season. So maybe that kind of helps them.
Yeah, but you're still... Cleveland is going to be interesting, especially, which we'll discuss in a little bit, what they do in the draft. Things could get really interesting there. Let's see. As far as winners from free agency, I mean, obviously you have the Rams. Philly added some pieces somehow. Let's see, some other big winners. I know Baltimore's been making some waves.
With Crabtree. What about, now, for me, one of my 5 losers of free agency, oddly enough, New England. With losing Amendola, as much as a key piece he was after they lost to Edelman, and with the whole uncertainty around Rob Gronkowski, Amendola was a key piece for them. And it's not like with them losing Malcolm Butler, another key piece, to Tennessee. That's still one of those things that baffles me with the Butler situation, but it's kind of hard to look at your big losers. Because, I mean, if you take in the big losers of free agency into account, it's kind of hard to nail it down to one player. Buffalo's another team I put on the list of big losers.
Yeah.
Just because of the whole Tyrod Taylor trade, with as much as he did for the team. And then you're getting A.J. McCarron, who is totally unproven. Just because he won a couple games for Cincinnati. It's not like the whole Garofalo thing with San Francisco where he won a couple games and he learned under Brady versus learning under Andy Dalton.
And I don't know if you've seen this also with Buffalo, but apparently Richie Incognito said he was going to retire. Now he's saying he doesn't want to retire, and now he's asking them to release him from his contract. Do you think he can actually get a job somewhere else with this kind of history of behavior that he has?
I don't know. I mean, if he were a young player, like Dez Bryant, another new free agent.
That'll be interesting.
But Incognito, I don't know. I was surprised Buffalo picked him up after the whole Jonathan Martin situation down in Miami.
Was Rex Ryan there when he got signed? Was that a Rex Ryan signing?
I'm not sure.
I think that was a Rex Ryan signing. It sounds like a Rex Ryan signing.
It actually sounds like a Marty Herney signing.
Don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
But now, another... I don't know how you would agree or disagree with this, but I think if Jim Irsay had cut Andrew Luck, that would have made them one of the big winners in free agency. Because other than one flash-in-the-pan season they had the year they got him, after they threw their entire season just to get him, he really hasn't done anything to impress me.
It's another... Indianapolis was hoping they'd stumble into another Peyton Manning. And that's one of the reasons that I'm so high on Peyton, is that he sat there and drug a team. Indianapolis could never get a whole team together. You just had Peyton, dominating on one side of the ball, and then the defense, they had, Matheson pass rushing and Freeney, but the secondary and linebackers were always kind of questionable. So they never really kind of got a complete team together. And they're doing the same thing now, but now you don't have, a future Hall of Famer doing it. You have this young kid who, yes, was one of the greatest prospects in the NFL draft ever. But you've got to put some pieces in place. And now he's hurt. You don't know what he's going to be like when he comes back.
I think Jim Irsay's taken a lot more patience with Luck than he did Manning, because it's the same situation all over again. Manning, damaged neck. Is he going to be good? Now you got Luck, who, honestly, the way it sounds, should be more progressed than where he is in his rehab, but he's not. So it's like, do we draft or do we not draft a quarterback?
But Luck's a lot younger than Peyton was. Peyton was, 36, 37, coming off major neck surgery. Nobody knew if he was going to play again. And he's lucky that Elway decided to take a shot on him. Of course, I guess Elway's lucky too because you got a Super Bowl out of it. But it's just Luck's young. They're gonna have to try this. They're gonna have to try him coming back. Now you've got this issue with what happens if you hit OTAs and training camp and Luck's still not throwing. He's been okay. Let me backtrack just a second. He's been throwing, but he has not been throwing full-size footballs yet. That's the last story I heard from him.
Throwing the Nerfs.
Nerf or nothing. We better get ad money for that. So what happens if you get to OTAs? What happens if you get all the way to training camp and he's not ready to practice? Now you're asking Brissett to go out there, work with the first team, and you have no idea who your star is going to be week one.
The good thing about it is that they didn't get Josh McDaniels. Instead, they got Frank Reich, the guy who just took an amazingly surprised and good Philadelphia Eagles offense, got them a Super Bowl. Not to mention, this is the same guy who stood on the sideline and competed in 4 Super Bowls with the Buffalo Bills. Not to mention what he did in his early days. Not his early days. It was kind of the twilight of his career. But in the early days of the Panthers franchise, he knows how to help get things established, how to get to that big game and win one finally for him. But I watched a thing online where he was talking to the team, and all he had up behind him on a whiteboard from a projector was the Colts symbol, and telling them, basically getting this unity that the team I don't think's had since Tony Dungy was coach. And just the way he's impressed on. I think what Frank Reich does is when they first start training camp, putting Brissett out there with the first offense and letting him learn, because he's not at that disadvantage where Cam Newton was when he got drafted, where I don't get to see the playbook until they lift the lockout. Brissett's had enough time to sit down with Reich, the offensive coaches, get the playbook, kind of get a feel for it in case Luck ain't ready to go. I think he'll be okay if he has to go out there and start, because he did do a good job for New England with the Brady suspension, which we were talking about before we started recording.
Yeah, that was quality material.
He did a good job with them. I mean, yeah, he got crushed, but for a guy that's inexperienced to go out there and called upon after arguably one of the greatest quarterbacks in the league is suspended, and then you got to go out there after the guy that backs him up. So it's like, I kind of see that Brissett has the pressure on him the same as Garoppolo did when he got to San Francisco last year. It's, okay, I've been behind Brady, so everybody's going to expect me to be great. I can't be Matt Castle 2.0, go to Kansas City and flush out.
And there's one thing I want to say about Brissett. You can talk about his weaknesses. He's got some weaknesses, but there's one thing he is not lacking. He's not lacking heart. To go from New England to Indianapolis, where you have no idea if their star quarterback's going to come back. They're asking you basically to start a week after you get traded there, and he goes out and he does the hard work, and he goes out there and he gets beat up behind a makeshift offensive line. He's got heart.
Yeah,
do I think he's going to be some great quarterback? No, but he's got heart.
That's kind of the same question I got about McCarron, because we've talked plenty of times, way before the idea for this show even came up, how I feel about not just quarterbacks from Alabama, but quarterbacks to come from the SEC, and how this is supposed to be the best conference in college football, yet out of all the conferences, they've produced the fewest Super Bowl caliber quarterbacks. aside from the Mannings, Cam Newton having his one season. I mean, because if you look at it, Brady is a Michigan guy. And with McCarron, wasn't he Heisman?
I think he may have been a finalist.
But look at some of the dominant quarterbacks in the league right now. They weren't, aside from Peyton Manning, the others weren't really considered for the Heisman, like Brady, Flacco, Roethlisberger, Eli. Those guys, and Peyton, none of them won the Heisman. Even to an extent, if you go back and look at Jim Kelly, not a Heisman. Colin Kaepernick, you were talking about him earlier. 3 NFC championship runs right there together. He wasn't a Heisman, and I think it was just, that Heisman kind of puts that chip on your shoulder where I think if I were a quarterback in college and my name come up for the Heisman, I'd ask to be taken out of consideration. Because if you look at, like, Brady, 6th round pick, look at the longevity Tony Romo had with Dallas. Undrafted. I mean, Peyton Manning, he was second in the Heisman to Woodson. What better way to have motivation to lose the Heisman? Because it gives you motivation to say, hey, I'm better than that Heisman trophy. I'm better than that award. I don't need that award to tell me how good I am. Now, if, say, the Heisman were voted on by college athletes, if they would let the athletes vote on it instead of a committee, it'd make it more prestigious, because then it's like, okay, my peers say I'm the best player in all of college football. That means more to me than a bunch of guys sitting in a room deciding who they like and who they don't like.
So, for those of y'all listening at home, that is a combination of his 2 biggest hates in college football: quarterbacks that win Heisman trophies and SEC quarterbacks. So we'll remember the Heisman Trophy one, because it'll become relevant again when we get to the draft discussion.
Actually, I have a higher... I'd say it's hatred for handing the Heisman Trophy to quarterbacks. Same as it is with the Super Bowl MVP going to quarterbacks. I don't think the quarterback position is the sole most important position, because the quarterback can't do his job if that front 5 doesn't block him. He also can't do his job if that running back don't get to him in time to take that handoff. The tight end has to block for him too sometimes. Wide receivers have to get open to catch the ball. On defense, to me, defense is more, you got to cover your job. Kind of like when Ndamukong Suh was up for the Heisman. At that time, to me, he was one of the better guys in there. But a quarterback got it. And the main thing I have a problem with is guys like Johnny Manziel was a rookie. Or, you might as well say a rookie, a freshman in college. Beat Alabama. Wins the Heisman Trophy. Tim Tebow, sophomore, wins the Heisman Trophy. And I think they need to switch it up for the Heisman. You have to be a junior or senior. You have to be somebody eligible to go to the NFL draft, because it puts too much pressure on a freshman. Look at Manziel. He's been out of the league, NFL, for a while because he came into the league with a chip on his shoulder. But yeah, I do have a big dislike for the SEC because it's held as like the best conference in college football while everybody else is kind of underneath them. And then you got the other guys underneath that. So it's kind of like if somebody says, okay, I got an offer to go to college at Alabama, Wisconsin, UCLA, or Alcorn State. I'm probably going to pick Alcorn State because smaller school, smaller football squad, more of a chance for me to get recognized versus going to that big Alabama school that's got 150 some players on the field. Yeah, they may come and play us and whip us from one goalpost to the other, but Steve McNair played in a Super Bowl. Alcorn State, Jerry Rice, Middle Tennessee State, I think is where he went. You don't have to go to that big school like Alabama to be successful. I mean, look at Cam. Cam went from, where was it, Florida? Went to like a lower level school, junior college kind of.
Junior college.
And then
that was for different reasons, though. Reasons that I haven't seen drug up in years.
But he went to Auburn, had that one breakout year because Auburn wasn't under a microscope like Florida. They just had a surprisingly good year, went out there, and again, another quarterback who beat Alabama, and now all of a sudden we're going to consider him for the Heisman. But he's kind of, to me, breaking that Heisman curse of quarterbacks that aren't successful. I mean, you've got two quarterbacks in the history of the Super Bowl to win the Super Bowl and get the MVP trophy in the Super Bowl. So it's kind of, it's a toss-up. And I think that's the one thing when you get in the NFL is these Heisman Trophy winners expect, okay, I'm the best player in college football. I deserve to start. If you get knocked out of the league, like Manziel did, go do like he did. Go to the Spring League. Play in it. If you don't make it, go to Canadian Football League. Play in it. Try your hand at arena football. Try something you can to get yourself back in the league. Don't automatically go out there and expect, I'm going to be starter. If I was Andrew Luck, yeah, my shoulder's not ready. Let Brissett be the starter. I'll back him up until my shoulder's 100%. I don't need to be the starter. Yeah, you're paying me a lot of money, but let him have a start. I'll back him up until my body's ready to go again.
The only thing I have to add about the spring leagues and stuff like that, the thing with the NFL is that you have so much talent coming into the league every year. You got college just pumping them out right now. Colleges are pumping them out. People are leaving, junior year, sophomore year if they're eligible. Sometimes they're like redshirted or something like that. And you got these veterans, people like, I think Manziel's doing a fine job coming back from his issues, but I don't think he gets a chance to break back into the league because of the way it is. You're not going to go sign someone off the street. In fact, to give you an example, I was absolutely shocked that Robert Griffin III found a spot. I thought he was done. So you just don't normally pull these people off the street. You can occasionally get it with other positions like kicker, punter, some skill positions, but almost never at quarterback. If there's quarterback talent, if you're at a high enough level, you are probably on the roster.
Now, do you think once they get ready to launch the XFL, do you think that kind of alleviates some of the stress of having to rush to get ready for the NFL? Or some of the guys who are stuck in free agency may go over there since the two leagues won't play at the same time? Since the XFL will be a spring league and then the NFL will be a fall. And I think that's what might help them this time is not trying to go against like what the USFL did. Try to go against the NFL. Kind of play when they're off. And the XFL could be, if I were running XFL, I would call it the second chance league. Just because, you can't play in the NFL because there's too many guys in the league. I'm going to go over here and play XFL for a year and see if it is. Because we never know. XFL may last in a year again. It may last 10 years. It maybe even replace the NFL. That's a stretch there, but it could. You never know. I mean, AFL, the arena football, they're down to 4 teams because they just tried to expand too fast, too quick. And I think the way the NFL's done it, they, what was it? It was when the Panthers and Jaguars came in, it had been a while since they expanded. Then they didn't expand again until they brought the Browns back. Then they expanded in 2002. So it's been 16 years since they expanded last. And is it time again? I don't think it is because there's still not enough talent to fill this. Because basically it'd be like, okay, we're going to expand the league, but we want to keep the 4-division system. And we're going to expand and add a team to each division. You do that, you dilute the market really, and then you don't really have enough. You'll have teams. You'll basically Cleveland would be the 9th worst team in the league because you'd have 8 teams that's just getting kicked around all year.
You gave me a great idea during your monologue.
I was monologuing.
You were monologuing. I appreciate that. No, my great idea was that we should do at some point would be a mock expansion draft. Because I was thinking while you were talking, I said, you know what? If you did expand the league, say, just for the sake of simplicity, let's just say we expand by one, who would be their starting quarterback? Who out of the other team's backups, because, everyone would protect their starting quarterback. Out of all the team's backups right now, who would you want at the helm of your expansion team? Is it Foles? Would it be Nick Foles right now?
He probably sticks out like a sore thumb out of all of them. Really, at the present, he's the only backup I can think of. I mean, honestly, I would inquire on, I know it'd be a stretch for them to do it because he'd probably be on their protected list too. But I might take a look at Julian Edelman, like a wide receiver for a team.
Mm-hmm.
You be interested to play quarterback for me? Come on over. It'd be like, I don't know, because
I think an expansion team would definitely draft a quarterback like number one, which I think, let's see, neither the Panthers nor Jacksonville did that. Did the New Browns? The New Browns did that, didn't
Tim
they?
Couch, I believe, was.
Yeah. And then the Texans did when they came in with David Carr. So I think it would definitely be one of those, we got to pick a quarterback because we've got you got Nick Foles here, who's good in a pinch, and literally nobody else.
Could you imagine having an expansion team this year and being able to pick certain guys? Could you imagine having Nick Foles under center and Dez Bryant as one of your receivers? I mean, or to an extent, since they look like they may be getting rid of him, could you imagine having Dez Bryant and this guy as your 1-2 receiver combo, Odell Beckham Jr.? Could you imagine having those two receivers?
It's a lot of ego. It's a lot of ego for one team.
But if you got a guy, if you've got a guy on your team, whether he's in the front office or he's the guy wearing the headset like Bill Belichick, you're not going to have that ego problem. I would also go after the Lions' newest acquisition, LeGarrette Blount, the guy who's been on the last two Super Bowl winning teams. That's still been one of my jokes. Anytime I talk football with anybody since he joined them, the Lions are going to win the Super Bowl because, hey, this guy's been in 2 in a row.
Well, Philly finally won one, so it's about time that they burn Detroit down, I guess. Granted, the party they had for Philly's Super Bowl win was a lot milder than I expected. I expected them to burn half the city down.
Do you remember a few years ago whenever the Lions didn't win a single game for a year, and it was almost 2 years between their last win and the win they got?
Mm-hmm.
When they won that game, the city of Detroit, you would have thought, won the Super Bowl, the World Series, the Stanley Cup. They won every championship in sports that year because they were loyal to it. They love that. And it's almost like watching the Cleveland Browns fans. That, to me, is where you look at your loyal. Yeah, Kansas City's got some loud fans in Arrowhead. They got the 12th man that seems to be jumping ship in Seattle. But teams like Detroit and Cleveland, to me, have the most loyal fans because look how bad Cleveland was when they didn't have a team for that brief time when the team left and went to Baltimore and then they got their new team. Those people are loving that team. And I know you remember one of our old bosses, how big a Browns fan he is. And one of our other managers, she, huge Cleveland fan. First time I heard them say it, I said, "What's wrong with you? You're a Cleveland fan?" They're asking me, "Who do you like?" "Atlanta." "Really? You like Atlanta?" I said, "Yeah, except for how they did all the players after they cut Vic. Yeah, not so much then. I like them now, but Matt Ryan, I guess it's because how big a Virginia Tech fan I am, and Boston College is a big rival of theirs. So I guess that still plays into why Matt Ryan's still not my favorite Falcon player."
We've gotten so far off track. I'm not sure where we were originally headed.
Actually, this show, I don't even think I had a plan for what we were going to do. I actually wrote down what I was thinking about Wednesday, I believe, and it was just kind of an idea. It was just I wanted to do an episode where we had talking points in case we wanted to, but just one of those episodes, where if somebody's listening to this, they're not, they're just reading off a script all the time. They're just so robotic. I wanted to have one where it's just, this is us. This is us when there's no microphone on, when it's nothing recording, it's just us talking, having fun. And this is pretty much how we come up with the idea for this.
Yeah.
Was just me rambling about stuff, and you go, David, you need a radio show.
Then I occasionally ask a question that gets him started on something, and then it just snowball effects onto something else, and we're...
As Frank Caliendo said when he was talking about John Madden, he kind of goes off on tangents, and we don't even know what he's going to do. And he was just making fun of John Madden about how he will sit there and he'll say something, and he'll end it with the same thing. And he said, it's like he just puts a Band-Aid on a John Madden verbal tragedy, and he'll just ramble on. He likes to draw pictures on guys' butts all the time and stuff. I was like, yeah, I can see that.
Now you made me sad because we have no good announcers now. Gruden's going back to coaching. Madden's long retired. I haven't even seen him in public. Romo's good, but he's very technical, which is great. It's nice to have someone in the booth that knows what they're talking about.
Then we got those two horrible announcers, Joe Buck, who Troy Aikman has to carry him like he's carrying a baby in a car seat stroller through a game because Buck is just so complaining all the time. And then Chris Collinsworth, horrible to listen to because he's just terrible. It's like, I'll take Troy Aikman and Tony Romo every game. Now, another guy from Dallas that I like to listen to is Daryl Johnston. Moose, love listening to him because he's kind of... I like it when announcers don't sit there and kind of play like they're on one of the teams.
Yeah.
Like Collinsworth did during the Super Bowl, pretty much. He is all over the Eagles and saying, oh, they missed a call, they missed a call, they missed a call. New England, this is their game. They're going to win the Super Bowl. It's guys like him. And in a minute, we're going to see how better you are than Mel Kiper. With my special thing, seeing that I have a special feature that we do every week on the show, this week it's going to be your mock draft. That's what we're getting ready. We're going to start now. It would work better if we had a list of all the players who are going to be in the draft and then each team, because then we could kind of fill it out. But we're going to do a mock draft. If you were in the front office we'll do the first 10 teams that's in the draft.
All right.
That way we're not doing the whole draft because it looks like right now about 36 minutes and might take 30 minutes to get through 10. Because how much time do they have on the clock again? It's 5 minutes, right?
In the first round, I believe it's 10. And then starting day 2, it goes down to 5. And then for the rest of it, I think it's separated by day. So in day 1, you have 10 minutes. So they get 32 picks in and they call it a day. And then day 2, I think they cut it in half. Because you have the second and third round on second day. And then the third day, I think, is 2 or 3 minutes. Might be 3 minutes. And they got to get them in there lightning fast. We got 4 rounds to get through. Get your pick in.
Okay, we're going to do kind of a lightning round type thing here. We've got 10 picks. And we'll put you through the war room of the first 10 picks. We'll give you a minute for each pick so that we can have a little bit of time after to say, well, I think this could... And if you want, you can say, I'll trade this pick to whoever. Okay, first team we got on the clock, Cleveland Browns.
All right, Cleveland Browns. For the Cleveland Browns, they need to pick a quarterback. Kiper, I'll admit I disagree with Kiper on this one. I would have picked Sam Darnold. He has Josh Allen out of Wyoming as his pick. I personally like Darnold better. I think he has the physical tools, has good IQ. But either way, I don't think that's a whole lot of difference between them. What do you think?
I'm not a big college guy, but I'm thinking Cleveland should focus on defense or offensive line because they've got all those other pieces on offense. There's nothing really left there for them to really cover. Not to mention, they have another pick in the first round, in the early first. Now, next up for you, New York Giants. Now, before you go off on them, remember, there is that big rumor swirling that they are fielding trade offers for Beckham, Odell Beckham Jr. Do you think they trade that pick and Beckham to Cleveland and maybe take the first pick?
I don't think they. Giants have one of two opportunities here. This is one of the deepest quarterback drafts in a long time. So do you pick Eli's successor, or do you pick someone's like Saquon Barkley, running back out of Penn State, and go on one last ride with your two-time Super Bowl winning quarterback to try to get another one?
I say draft a successor. It's 14 years in. Let's go ahead and get somebody in there. So if Eli decides 2018 is his last season, let's get somebody in there for him to mentor for this last season. Or even if it's not, let's get somebody in there for him to mentor that we can pay him a decent salary, but it's not going to be enough to break the bank. So I say go get a successor.
Yeah, so they would probably pick between Darnold, Allen, or possibly even Rosen there.
Now, before you pick the next one, we need to look this up for next show. But there's a possibility we could see three quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3.
I don't think they've ever gone 1, 2, 3 before. I'm not sure. I know we've had 1, 2 a lot.
So your next choice is the New York Jets are on the clock.
The New York Jets are on the clock. Well, this sounds like a broken record. Skipping. They are going to pick a quarterback. They did not trade all those picks to Indianapolis for this pick to pick Chubb or Barkley. No, they are after a quarterback. So if Cleveland picks a quarterback 1, which I assume they are going to do, and then the Giants come out and pick a quarterback, I'm going to tell you right now, the Jets are going to pick a quarterback. What I don't get is, and I'm not in their front office, why they didn't try to move up to 2 and get a better, because if it goes quarterbacks 1 and 2, well, now you're stuck with your third option. Potentially stuck with your third option. So it's going to probably be Darnold, Allen, Rosen, 1, 2, 3. And then whoever wants to pull the trigger on Baker Mayfield or Lamar Jackson after that.
And we're back. Little technical issue to fix. Now, Jacob, we are on Cleveland's second pick, which the last time I recall they had 2 picks in the first round was when they picked Johnny Manziel. But that was in the middle of a trade during the draft. So, do you pick another player here, or do you trade it away?
I think they've got enough picks and enough young talent that they shouldn't trade out of this pick. I feel that this pick, they should use it on a talented player, whoever the best player left available is. Okay, so if you take all the quarterbacks off the board, the best players there, I would argue for taking Saquon Barkley.
Running back. And make your offense, you could be like the Cowboys last year, where your offense runs through that running back, but then you have this young quarterback behind him that can make throws, so you have to sit there and stack the box. Well, then the quarterback will take the top off your defense. And it just kind of pick your poison with your opponents. Or, and I know you would argue for this one, you could go defense and end up with Bradley Chubb, put him across from Myles Garrett, and now you have a pass rush to go with everything else. Because on the defense, everything runs through the pass rush.
If you can get to the quarterback and knock him down, excuse me, you can get to the quarterback and knock him down, he can't throw the ball.
Okay, next up, the last time I recall this team having an early draft pick was when they picked up Tim Tebow, and that is the Denver Broncos next.
Yeah, fun fact, the last time the Broncos changed ownership, since that time, they have more Super Bowl victories than losing seasons. They're a historically good franchise, so they normally don't pick this high. So, Denver. Denver's in a tough spot. So, who'd they land in the quarterback frenzy? They got Keenum, right?
Yeah, I believe they picked up Case Keenum.
They got Keenum. So, they could stay away from quarterback here. They really don't need anyone, they don't need a running back really. They don't really need defensive line help. Some stuff they could use is cornerback. They could use a cornerback. They could use pass rushers. So this could be a Chubb landing spot. Although they run a different type of defense. They normally run a 3-4. Offensive linemen. Everyone's always needing an offensive lineman. And potentially wide receivers too. I don't think they need wide receivers that bad. They've still got some talent there. But definitely on the defensive end as far as pass rushing and cornerback, especially with Talib leaving. So as far as corner, I would pick them at corner here. And I would overdraft a little bit and get Denzel Ward, the cornerback out of Ohio State. He's about the consensus top corner in the draft. And if you pass up on him, there's a wide gap.
Okay, now the next one on the list is a team who we failed to mention it whenever we mentioned the second pick, but the Giants have a new head coach. The next team also does, and we mentioned him a little bit ago. Indianapolis Colts, Frank Reich. Questionable quarterback circumstances. Do you, as the Colts, try to trade early into the draft to get a future quarterback? Or do you hang on that hope that Luck's going to be ready or Brissett pans out for this year and go with another position?
I think definitely if they were going to pursue a quarterback, they would have stayed at 3. And since they traded back with the Jets, they're definitely going to need some pass rushers. They need linebackers. And I can't think of a time that Indianapolis did not need linebackers. Offensive line is in desperate need of help.
Okay, next up, the last time this team picked early in the first round was a few years ago when they picked up Jameis Winston. Tampa Bay's on the clock in what could be a make or break season for Dirk Cutter. Where do you go there? Because I believe they lost Doug Martin.
They did. So you got to look at the running back prospects. I don't think there's any way in hell Saquon Barkley falls that far. So anybody else, any other running back at that pick is overdrafting. So I think you kind of got to go with whoever is the best player left. So they could pick a defensive lineman. They could pick a safety. They could get some offensive line help. That seems like a common thing. Everyone needs offensive line help.
Okay, this next team, you're going to stay offensive-minded as well, mainly because their new coach, Coach Nagy, in Chicago, they've already established Trubisky is going to be their franchise quarterback. What kind of help do they get him? Because I don't see them going defense. I see Chicago may potentially be the only team in the first 10 picks that goes offensive line, unless Cleveland does, since they lost that big hole they had. So what do you think Chicago goes for? If you're GM, what do you go for?
I think they've got to get some offensive line help. I think they need, they had Josh Sitton left, their longtime guard. So I think they need someone either in the middle or on the edges to solidify that offensive line. Because we've seen it before. Young quarterback ruined because he just cannot get time to throw the ball.
Okay, next up, we all know that there was questions when John Lynch took the GM job in San Francisco. What was he going to do? And what's one of the first things he does during the season? Makes a blockbuster trade with New England for Garofalo. And they've just this past week, had some legal issues on defense. Do you start looking for that guy's replacement, or do you... Because we know Lynch is a defensive guy, Shanahan's offense. So with them, it's kind of like a 50-50 kind of gambit.
Yeah, and it's going to sound like I'm a broken record. Get some help on the O-line. Young quarterback. You want some help up front. Get him some targets to throw to. And I think that's the way they'll go. Either they'll go with a wide receiver or a tight end. I don't think they go a tight end that early. Maybe one of their later picks. But you get one of the wide receivers or offensive linemen in the draft. And beyond that, maybe a pass rusher. Once you get past like the top 5, everything kind of becomes muddied. And then when trades get thrown in, all of a sudden you have no idea what you're doing.
The last team to pick in the top 10, I think, hands down, they're going defense because it's John Gruden and the Oakland Raiders. And remember, I believe, is it this year or is it next year's or last year before they go to Vegas?
Next year.
Now,
they were going to play 3 years in Oakland, with last year being one of them.
And to put on top of that, the Raiders do have pressure as soon as they get to Vegas because the Vegas hockey team has already made the playoffs in a very short span. I mean,
first season.
This is pretty much almost like what we've seen with Carolina and Jacksonville in their early days. So, how big would it be for the Raiders in one of their last 2 seasons in Oakland before they move out of California to potentially make the playoffs, win their division, win their conference, win a Super Bowl? We know Gruden can do it, but the big question surrounding this team is he's been out of the league for 10 years. And what's the first thing he goes after? I mean, we've seen they went after Jordy Nelson. Big addition to the offense. A lot of people say, well, they lost Crabtree. That's a big hole. They filled it with Jordy Nelson. Jordy Nelson, to me, is above Crabtree when it comes to play. Plus, you don't have to worry about the ego that surrounded him when he was with San Francisco and Oakland. So who do you think they go after? Another wide receiver? Or does Gruden go defense?
I think they almost solidly go defense unless one of the tackle prospects sticks out to them. Because, they have, who is it, Penn? Donald Penn is their left tackle. He's getting old. So they may want to try to draft a replacement there. But I think almost guaranteed they go defense. They need someone to anchor that defense. I mean, they've got Khalil Mack, but I think they need to get a linebacker in there, someone to be a captain of that defense.
Now, just looking, I know we said we'd do the first 10, but I just want to run through the other teams. And, then after we talk about who's left, we can kind of say, what team do you think may get that? Because, every year in the draft, there's that one guy that is supposed to be like a top 5 pick.
That falls.
Like Manziel, and who was the other guy? I forgot. There was one guy, he was supposed to be like an early first rounder. He fell to like early 3rd.
I don't know, but the
was
biggest...
it Russell Wilson? Wasn't he one that fell?
No, everyone thought he was going to be later. He didn't really come on the board until he was named day 1 starter over...
Hasselbeck?
No, Hasselbeck was gone at that point.
Flynn.
It was Flynn. They paid Flynn all this money to come in, and then some rookie beat him out. But the biggest one is Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was supposed to be like one of the top few picks and fell all the way to 32, 31.
Okay, the rest of the first round we have at 11 the Dolphins, then the Bills, Redskins, Packers, Cardinals, Ravens, Chargers, Seahawks, Cowboys, Lions, Bengals, the Bills with another pick, New England, Carolina, Tennessee, Atlanta, New Orleans, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, Minnesota, New England, and Philly ends the first round. Do you think one of those guys, like with the recent, odd as it sounds, rumors that potentially, and we know Bill Belichick is a crazy guy, what do you think there's maybe a chance that, say, Belichick trades one of his 2 first-round picks, or he trades Gronk for somebody's early pick? Could you imagine how serious of a, we covered it earlier, pretender, contender, how big do you think they would go from pretender to contender if by some miracle Bill Belichick trades Rob Gronkowski to Cleveland for their first 2 picks, or their first pick? Do you see it?
I don't think he's worth that. I would say Cleveland overpaid. Gronkowski is the best tight end in the NFL. I'm not denying that.
Yeah, he's hands down. Since Tony Gonzalez retired, Gronkowski is that guy everybody looks to. That's me. Greg Olsen may be the only other tight end in the NFL that I can actually name right off the top of my head.
The problem with Gronk is he cannot stay healthy. You do not trade a first rounder. If you've got a first round pick that high, if you desperately need a tight end, you go draft the greatest one out of college you can find. You have a young guy that that you can try to coach the talent out of him, and you still not spent all this money. So no, I don't think that'll happen. What I do think could happen, go back up to the end of the first round, is you've got Philly, New England, Minnesota, Jacksonville. One of those 4 picks, if I was a betting man, I'd make you bet, but I'm not a betting man. But I would almost bet you that one of those 4 picks gets traded to someone in the early second round, trades up back into the first round, drafts a quarterback, maybe Lamar Jackson, with one of those late first round picks to get that 5th-year option. We've seen it done before with Teddy Bridgewater, and I think someone else did it. But I almost guarantee you that will happen. I think it'll be Philly. I think Philly will just trade back a couple picks. Get a few picks out of it. You're already at 32. What does it matter if you end up at, say New York doesn't take a quarterback with their first pick. Let's say they decide to leapfrog Cleveland's first, second round pick and trade with Philly. Granted, they probably wouldn't trade with Philly. They'd probably trade with New England or Minnesota to move back up, draft their quarterback that they want to try to develop while they still have Eli.
One thing I was looking at is towards the end of the draft that you got to remember is right around there in the 200s is where New England selected Brady all those years ago. Do you think somebody in 4th, 5th, 6th, maybe the 3rd round drafts that future franchise quarterback that could be the next Tom Brady? Because remember, when he was in the draft, he was too scrawny. He was too small. And that New England front office said, let's get that kid Brady out of Michigan. You think somebody, like right there, if you look at how crazy this is. Look at picks 194 through 196. The Rams have 3 consecutive picks. They could basically sandbag those 3 picks into something big. Yeah. And this year's, I don't know if this is a good thing or bad thing, But, you know, you have the Heisman is the best quarterback or the best player in college football. And, you know, in the NFL, there is the Lozman Award. This year, Atlanta gets that honor.
Oh, what does that call it? Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick in the draft.
Probably.
Fun fact, it doesn't necessarily mean it will be Atlanta because comp picks are tradable.
Do you think it gets away, or you think they just throw away?
Why would they trade the last pick in the draft? The very last pick. What point does it make to trade the last pick? Oh, we'll throw the last pick in the draft in. Like, nobody cares. At that point, you're just picking a undrafted free agent that you guaranteed to get.
And a lot of times, I mean, you can look. There's plenty of players. I say, like Tony Romo, undrafted. He had a long career. You can't say long and successful, but he had a long career. And most of the time, if you're in the 7th round, you don't even really have a meaningful career. You just go out there, sign a contract, get some money so you can go out and use your college degree. The one exception I can think of is TJ Houshmandzadeh. Played for the Bengals and the Seahawks. He had a decent career, but it wasn't Hall of Fame worthy. But, you know, I think a lot of times players put too much pressure on themselves I have to be a 1st round pick. I have to be a 2nd round pick.
And I think a lot of that pressure has to do with the money. You know, you talked about how much money that these top picks are getting. It's not as much as it used to be with the rookie wage scale, but it's still a lot of money. You're talking about they could sign their contract, get their signing bonus, and they could move out of wherever low-income housing they might be living in. You know, you have to remember, a lot of these guys come from poor backgrounds. One of the reasons that most of them are broke within a few years of leaving the league is because they don't know how to manage money.
I think when it comes, a lot of people don't look at what all goes into when a player gets that huge contract, what all goes into it. But I think Michael Vick said it best when he was talking about when he got in all his trouble. And he said basically, you know, when you come from circumstances like he did, you know, his cousin, same circumstances, but his cousin's richer out of football than he was in football with real estate. And I think Michael said it a lot. It's the people you surround yourself with make you feel you owe them, so you're spending more money than what you should. But to an extent, when you get hired, or not hired, but when you go in the NFL draft, the first thing you do is hire an agent. They get a percentage of your salary. The next thing you do is you go out and get an accountant, somebody that can handle your money right. Then you've got a personal assistant, somebody that can handle all your endorsement deals and your contracts. And they read every bit of the paperwork and then tell you and your agent, hey, this is what it says. This is the key parts. And you may have, like Tom Brady, he's probably surrounded by maybe 15, 20 people. So by the time you take into account if he makes $20 million a year, he may get 10, 11 million of that, and the rest of it spread out all over the place. Honestly, if it were me, I would go into the league, make my money, get my career set. If you're in college, go into whatever the field is, get you a degree to be a sports agent, because you make more money as a sports agent than you do a player. Because think about it. Let's go back up here to the first. Okay, in those first 5 picks, say you're the agent who represents those first 5 picks.
Yeah, you just made some money.
You could pretty much, when those guys retire, or they could say, well, I'm going to go with a different agent. Okay, I'm retiring. I done made my money because Sam Bradford's agent. The dude probably could have represented just Sam Bradford and be loaded just because of all the money Bradford got.
We'll have to go back and look at, I don't know. I know that maximum an agent can take from a contract is 3% in the NFL. which is actually quite low compared to some of the other leagues. But I think that's off the total value of the contract. And then some players don't even get the whole contract. You know, you hear these contracts like $160 million, and then they end up only getting half of that because the rest wasn't guaranteed. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, as soon as you get drafted, 3% to your agent. Then you got income tax, federal income tax, in a lot of states, state income tax. So there goes 40% of it out the window right there, at least, in taxes. Then, like you said, you have
personal security in there. I forgot about that job.
Oh, yeah. Your handler, basically.
That's actually a separate job, because if you're a guy like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, there's that guy going, tapping you on the shoulder, hey, we got to move on. Let's go. But could you imagine...
These girls aren't 18. Come on.
Actually, that would be a guy on the Patriots squad, but it wouldn't be Brady. That'd be Gronk. Hey, Gronk, those girls ain't old enough to drink. Let's go over here. Come on. But yeah, you know, you sit there and think. I think I looked the other day, and now this is crazy, but almost the amount that some of these like Russell Wilson's rookie contract that he got with the Seahawks, he made less money in like 4 years than Brock Lesnar did. Russell's going out there, and if you think about it, basically 64 games of his career.
Not counting the playoff appearances and the Super Bowl win.
So yeah, you say maybe 70 to 80 games in his rookie contract. He made less money than Brock Lesnar did to make 6 appearances. And basically, he worked in 1 year's time and made, I think it was $5 million in what Russell Wilson has to play 1 quarter for.
Yeah.
So basically, while Russell Wilson was sitting in the locker room at halftime during the Super Bowl, Brock Lesnar made more money than him. And it's kind of, you know, you just kind of have to sit there and weigh your options. And I think a lot of times that's what, like, in the case of Danny Amendola, the reason he left New England, they didn't offer him the money. And a lot of times you got to look at how much your agent makes. And to an extent, that's why I think Richard Sherman was smart for his deal he got, because he doesn't have an agent representative, so that's less of a cut. But at the same time, you can't, if you don't have an agent representing you, it's almost like going to court without a lawyer.
Yeah.
You can't, when you go to try to appeal something in that contract, sorry, you know,
you signed it.
You signed it. You 100%. It's all on you.
Yeah, and the thing with Sherman, his contract is just full of incentives. So, which is great if he plays well. But if, you know, day one, you know, the grounds crew did a terrible job, you step in a hole and break your ankle and you're done for the year. Now all of a sudden you're not making any money. You know, you're just making your base salary. You don't have a chance to get it to any of these performance-based incentives. And so you screwed yourself over. That's why I think eventually, and we've seen it this offseason with Cousins' contract, eventually the players are going to push it to the point of being almost 100% guaranteed contracts. Kind of like what baseball does. Guaranteed contracts.
Yeah, I think the worst thing, especially when people talked about the steroid scandal in baseball,
mm-hmm.
I always say, you can't blame the players for the steroid thing. You can't blame who they go to and get the stuff from. In baseball, it pretty much, with those incentive-laced contracts, like, I want to say it was Andy Pettitte when he got questioned, and they asked him, did you use? And he said yes, because my contract said I had to play in so many games in a season that, yeah, I took the stuff so I could get back so I could play in those games. Because if your contract basically says, like in NFL with Sherman's, if a player, their contract says, well, you got to play 200 snaps in a season. I don't know if that's over exaggerating or under, but now if you're an offensive lineman, that might be understated. But if you're a number 3, number 4, number 5 receiver, you're lower on the depth chart, and your contract says you got to play 200 snaps in a season. Or in a running back's case, you got to get 30 touches on the ball in so many weeks to get 20% bonus. Yeah, a guy's going to be fussing, hey, I need the ball more. I need the ball more. But at the same time, that problem shouldn't fall on the player. That's on the agent and whoever in the front office authorized that contract, because then you're saying that guy's more important than the whole team. So if, say, Brady has in his contract that if he gets so many games a season, kind of like not last year, but the year before when Phillip Rivers had that huge, 600-yard game or something like that?
Something close to that. I don't think we got over 600 yet.
Because, I mean, to me, it's... Sometimes you look at it like, okay, if I fully guarantee his contract, I'm putting a lot of faith in that guy. Mm-hmm. Or if you do an incentive contract, well, I don't think this guy's worth the money I'm offering him, so I'm going to make all these ridiculous demands. To me, if I'm offering a contract, the one incentive that I would put in there is, okay, you're not going to use any performance-enhancing drugs, or you void all bonuses for the season, something like that. Or like in Gronk's case, the guy hardly works out in the off season, yet he wonders why. A lot of people wonder why he doesn't make it a whole season, or he doesn't play a full year without somehow getting hurt. Versus a guy like Brady. Brady, 20 years ago, at his age, would already be looked at as, we're cutting him. He's too old to be on the squad. But the guy's in better condition than Andrew Luck or RG3, Sam Bradford. These guys, again, I think with the exception of Luck, I think the other two are Heisman guys. Again, back to the Heisman thing, But the thing I'm talking about has nothing to do with them winning the Heisman, but it's these three guys have had major injury setbacks. But at the same time, so has Tom Brady. Torn ACL. I think it was just ACL.
Yeah.
But the guy is still playing, and he's playing better. To me, his career has been better since the knee injury than before.
You can look at him before his ACL and after, and he has 2 Hall of Fame careers there.
Yeah, with him, it's like, and both of us have had our teams get beat by Brady in the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. And yet, with him, it's kind of hard to argue, because you can look at him and say, it wasn't his defense that won his Super Bowls. Granted,
I think the defense had a lot to do with him getting to Super Bowls, but he has played exceptionally well in every Super Bowl game.
He's the kind of guy that when he goes to retire, if I'm an owner of a team, I'm going to be calling his agent, hey, ask him, does he want to coach? Does he want to come in as something? Because the guy, okay, one factor may be the fact that he's married to a supermodel that helps him keep in shape. But at the same time, I think it's Julian Edelman is either dating or married to one of his wife's friends, just like Wes Welker. And, maybe it's that, or because, his workout thing, that TB12, is like a big controversy in football. But at the same time, it's hard to argue that this guy's...
It's easy to argue against the methodology of TB12, but it's hard to argue against the results.
Especially with him.
Mm-hmm.
Gronk, on the other hand, him being out and partying in the offseason all the time, or after the Super Bowl they lost, he's out partying afterwards. And it's like, God, even with Peyton, Peyton's injury happened towards the end of his career. So, yeah, that may have been a factor why he wasn't as good at the end. But, there's a lot of people who look at Tom Brady and say, I think he could be a 50-year-old guy out there still playing quarterback because he just has that health. He keeps himself healthy enough, and he's not. I mean, probably the hardest thing he drinks maybe wine, maybe. But aside from that,
Tom Brady might play till he's 50, but if he does that, I think there'll be a breakdown on the play at some point, and there'll be a blindside free rusher, and then Tom Brady will just disappear in a cloud of smoke. He hits so hard that he just falls apart.
Kind of like the scene in Star Wars with Darth Vader and Obi-Wan or Luke Skywalker. They just vanish, and all that's left on the field is the uniform.
The uniform just falls.
But yeah, I think that's what a lot of problem is with a lot of these players in the league is they don't look at, okay, it's a paycheck, but you got a lot more you got to put into it. You got working out, you got to stay in shape, even if in the off season.
I think the fans don't realize that a lot because it's not just that they just show up. You think the football players just show up at practice a week before the game if ready to play? No, there's off-season workouts. You got like J.J. Watt gets up at like 4 o'clock every morning and hits the gym. I don't know if he still does that right now since he's recovered from injury. But like 4 o'clock every morning in the gym working out, And then after that, you've got meetings, especially if you are a skill position player where you got to sit there and look at the projector while your coach goes over the plays. Well, this team's got a strong defensive line, so we need to try to throw more screens here. We'll try this type of screen. And you got to remember, after working out, you just want to go to sleep.
I mean, you can even look back to the lockout year. Cam Newton gets drafted, can't touch a workout book. Mm-hmm. But what does he do? He's meeting with players that's already on the Panthers roster and working out with them, learning from them what he can about the playbook that doesn't violate the rules. Lockout gets temporarily lifted. He gets his hands on a playbook. Lockout's resumed. He can go home and read that through that playbook and learn it and then go back out there again, and he's ready to go. And I think that's where a lot of players, and Gronk especially, you can't sit there and even Manziel, he admitted he didn't know how to read an offense. He didn't know how to read defense. He didn't know what he was doing. And you got to it's more, most players don't look at when they get drafted, you got to put in more of the work. And I know if you remember back to one of the earlier shows we did where I was talking about guys who I think didn't live up to the standards of the NFL, even though, Tebow made the playoffs. Manziel, Kaepernick, Ryan Leaf, especially. Chris Winkie was another one. Yeah. He was probably like one of the dark marks on the Panthers' history. David Carr. You see these guys, and I think a lot of what especially made guys like Kaepernick last was the system he was in. But a lot of those guys didn't put in the effort. And a lot of times, if your career doesn't work out in the NFL, especially if you're a college football player who's like a linebacker, offensive lineman, if your career doesn't work out there is still another sport you can go to. And that is like NASCAR, because that's where they get most of their crew guys, is from football where it didn't work out. It's almost kind of like a longest yard kind of deal. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't work out there, go to this alternative, and you got to actually put in the work. You can't just show up for practice, work out a little bit, go home. And even though a lot of people say that you can't gauge a video game and turn it into real life, just some of the video games, especially if you go into like with the Madden game and do the, I don't know if they still call it that because I haven't played them in years, but the BNFL Superstar mode. I did one of those one year where you could take your player off the college game, transfer him to the NFL. The guy I had was all-star. I mean, broke the school's career rushing record in one season. 3-time Heisman winner. Of course, this was at Virginia Tech too, so definitely not realistic because they don't look at them for that. But when I uploaded him to the Madden game, I excelled at the IQ test on the game. Well, my guy doesn't go till late third round as running back to Cincinnati. And on the game, you have to work your way from third string up to starter. And even if you just do a guy on there from scratch, you have to work your way up. You have to learn the plays. You have to practice. You got to do all the workout kind of stuff on the game. And you kind of see that it's not handed to you. I tried it with a quarterback on there once. And I had to work my way up. And I think, some of the guys want to automatically start. I mean, then you got some guys that come from college, they're ready to start.
Yep.
And I don't know how many people would argue that I'm right or wrong on this, but look at what happened with the Cowboys last year with Ezekiel Elliott. They were unstoppable with Elliott. Elliott serves a suspension. They faltered. They fell apart. And just so happened, our now world champion Eagles capitalized on it. And, you gotta, if you think you're going to be a starter in NFL coming out of college, you got to be ready to play. And like Bosa with the Chargers, that's one of those guys that, if you hold out on a contract straight out of college, once you sign that contract, you need to be the first guy in and the last guy out during the meetings, practice, going up to your most veteran guy at your position and going, okay, what do I need to do to catch up? I need to get caught up. I need to be ahead of everybody else. How do I get to where you're at just by the playbook, by practicing, meetings? What? Do like you would if you're in school. As soon as the coach is done talking, throw your hand up and say, Coach, what about this? What if this happens? What do we do if this guy goes down? Especially if you're a rookie quarterback, like Tyrod Taylor's new in Cleveland, or especially in A.J. McCarron's case, because he's going into a team that showed last year they took a guy nobody wanted in Taylor and worked him in the system and the offense. Go in there and say, hey, Coach, what's our plan if something happens to him? Because, if I would have been a player on the New England Patriots squad, a young guy like a rookie or somebody who had just traded into the team, and when they done the Garoppolo trade, I'd be like, Coach, what's our long-term plan if something happens to him? Because if something happens to Brady, that's a big hole to fill.
Yeah.
Or like Carolina. You've seen what happened to Carolina without Kuechly. Mm-hmm. Big hole there. Same thing with Atlanta. Matt Ryan. What happens if the Giants? What happens if something happens to Eli? Or the Seahawks, Russell Wilson? You got to be able to know, what do I have to do to step up our game with if that guy goes down? What role, what pressure does that put on me if that guy goes down? And, the main thing most teams worry about is we're untouchable, They've got this untouchable thing about them. Like Minnesota, I was concerned about them with the whole quarterback situation. They basically scrapped every quarterback, bring in another guy, and everybody kept saying they overpaid. But I think Cousins was just in a bad system in Washington that wasn't working for him like they expected. And that's another team that I want to see what they do, because we saw what happened with Alex Smith in San Francisco and in Kansas City. He definitely made the two teams good. It helped having him and Kaepernick in that Harbaugh system. And once Harbaugh left, it was like nobody knew what was going on that team. Now that they've got Kyle Shanahan, and this will be the first time since Harbaugh, I think, that they've had a coach come back a second year.
Yeah, because Was it Tom Sula was 1 year?
1 year, and then
Kelly was 1 year.
So, that's another thing to look at is he's had a year to get everything set. Now, this year, it's not Chip Kelly's leftovers that Kyle's having to clean up. It's his team, and what can he do to top that 6-10?
Mm-hmm.
Can he knock off the Rams, who seem to be this year's team?
The NFC West is going to be a bloodbath.
Well, I actually think Wilkes walked into the worst possible time ever because he's got arguably one of the most uncertain quarterback jobs in the NFL. I'd actually take A.J. McCarron over Sam Bradford. Yeah, Bradford's got the experience, but at the same time, he can't stay healthy.
You're pretty much guaranteed to be missing him for half the season.
Yeah, because I know for sure he hasn't played a full season. About the best way to keep Sam Bradford on your team for a full year is if you make him the third string quarterback when you know he's not going to get any touches.
Probably still get hurt. Anyway, so in the NFL, you're talking about players coming in and putting in the work. It always seems when you go through the NFL greats, the Hall of Famers, it always seems to be one of two different types of players. You either got the insanely talented players, the guys that came in and were just heads and shoulders talent-wise above everybody else, or you tend to have the hard workers, the people that were in there. I know we brought this up before with wide receivers. You have, two of the best wide receivers of all time. You have Moss, who was never really the big worker. He was just crazy talented. And then you had Jerry Rice, who was that guy that was constantly at work honing his game.
One guy I think of when you talk about that talent, I'm kind of a little biased when it comes to the guys that come out of Virginia Tech. But at the time that I became a fan of his, I didn't know he went to Virginia Tech because I didn't really know a lot of the defensive guys as Cam Chancellor. A guy that's linebacker size, but has the speed of a safety. And when he skipped out on those few games, I think it was last year or the year before, whenever his contract issue, you could tell that defense needed him. And when he came back, the defense rebounded. So it's just all about, I don't know, to me, it's all about the diva attitude versus the work ethic. And, a lot of people don't like Richard Sherman because they think he's got that diva attitude. And they say, well, he's not that good of a player because nobody ever throws towards him. Well, to the extent, that's the idea. If your team chooses you to be the shutdown corner, they won't throw to you.
A general manager would pay a corner $20 million a year if no one would ever throw at him. I'm serious. They would pay through the nose to have a corner that no one would challenge. We've kind of got a marathon session going on here today.
Yeah, this one was pretty good for us not to have a plan going in.
Just kind of winging it. Oh, I think we move and groove a lot better when we got football topics going on, because that's something we both are pretty knowledgeable on. When we get outside that, sometimes we get a little shaky.
We need to get us somebody on here who is a basketball expert so we can try to cover some of the basketball stuff, because with their playoffs starting, it's kind of interesting to see, because the Lakers aren't in. And that, to an extent, is almost like the Patriots missing the playoffs. You don't know what to talk about. But hopefully we'll be able to get the next episode out. We'll be able to do one maybe next week If not, for sure the following week. So that's it for now, and I think that's a good episode.
I think we did pretty good. All right. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Not So Neutral Zone. Check us out at our Facebook page. For David, I'm Jacob. Hope you have a great week.
Any questions or comments, send them to our email at notsoneutralzone@yahoo.com. And if you head over to the YouTube channel, hit subscribe and give us a thumbs up on the episode.